Meanwhile, marine tracking websites have revealed that the U.S.-flagged Sagamore has set sail from Cyprus to carry aid to a pier built by the U.S. off Gaza. U.S. officials say the vessel will be used to offload supplies onto a floating pier built to expedite aid into the besieged territory. Israel, since the beginning of its war in Gaza, has heavily restricted aid to the Strip. The pier, as well as humanitarian aid drops by air, have been criticized by aid groups as a costly and ineffective way of delivering aid. Reports say Palestinians have been fighting for clean water, among other needs. These, according to the Palestinians, is part of the evolving challenges and complexities for people who evacuated from Rafah city all the way to the central area to set up their tents. Tens of thousands of displaced, terrified and exhausted Palestinians have packed up their belongings and fled Rafah as Israel shells the eastern area of the overcrowded city. In another development, Palestine Red Crescent Society says its rescuers have retrieved the bodies of 5 people confirmed killed and others wounded from an Israeli attack on Rafah's Tal Sultan neighborhood. Earlier reports revealed that at least 16 persons were injured from a residential building.
Global Affairs analyst Ejike joins me now to discuss the warning issued by the WHO and developments on the Israel-Hamas war. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Okpa. Well, let's begin by getting your take on President Biden's warning to stop supplying some weapons to Israel if it launches a major ground operation in Rafah.
Hello. Thank you for having me. And I want to apologize. I'm at the airport, and so you may have some background noise. But it's good that President Biden has issued the warning to Israel, saying, hey, if you continue on this war path in this manner, we're going to stop supplying you. Then what's going to happen is, will Israel or whatever his name is, the Prime Minister, would he heed to that warning? Or would he feel like, look, I'm too much into this fight and I can't withdraw because Israel has to prevail? So those are the challenges, but it's good that Biden has come around to say, we're going to stop supplying you the weapons except you stop, prosecuting the war in the manner you have been.
But how do you place that warning side by side President Biden's position to continue to make sure Israel is secure?
Well, I think the world is now seeing that the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. As much as we have tried to reach some peaceful coexistence, something is always happening. Now we are hoping that Netanyahu and the Palestinians will now come to terms, have a permanent ceasefire in order for this war to stop. Weeks now, months now, we may see a peaceful resolution, but until that happens, nobody knows, because both sides have ego. Both sides, feel that they have to do what they have to do in order to inflict more injury on the other side.
Well, other humanitarian concerns, following the closure of the Rafah border crossing, the UN says it is choking off the entry of life-saving aid into Gaza. The WHO is warning about the fact that hospitals would soon run out of fuels in southern Gaza. How do we get parties to the war to agree to a truce?
Well, when war is on, everybody's going to try to, inflict as much injury on the other side. So if the humanitarian thing is stopped, hopefully they're expecting that to force the hands of the Palestinians to stop what they are doing. But the human nature is very resilient. They're still going to find a way to smuggle in or get into their people what it is they need in order to keep fighting in the war. So the World Health Organization, all the world organizations, the UN, and everybody. This shows you how weak these institutions are, because if they are very strong, by now there should have been so much pressure on the Palestinians as well as the Israelis for this thing to stop, because the human lives that have been lost, you're not going to replace them. When they're gone, they're gone. And then families are going to bear the scars of this loss, and that scar is going to keep fueling future conflict. So we have to come to terms to where we say we don't need these wars. Israel has the right to exist. The Palestinians have the right to exist. And we have to come to terms to recognize those two-state solution, and we're going to have to force it.
Let's talk about what's happening where you are in the U.S. It's about 6 months to the elections there. Donald Trump, one of the contenders, is yet to decide his VP pick, even as he battles the hush money trial. How are Americans counting down to the polls?
Well, again, I'm biased, towards Trump. He's my candidate. Whatever the Democrats are doing to stop him or slow him down obviously hasn't worked because he's still leading in the polls. He's raising as much money as he can. The trial, as far as I'm concerned, as far as many Americans are concerned, not about the prosecution, it's about the persecution of Trump. And, the VP announcement is going to come, and I think I know who it's going to be. It's going to be Senator Tim Scott, the senator from South Carolina, except something else happens. But I think that's going to be his running mate. And with that, then that creates an opportunity to see a true African-American running as a VP with president, compared to Kamala Harris, who says she's African-American, but she's not an African-American. An African-American has to be somebody born whose parents, came from Africa, but they don't have any direct connection. She had parents Canadian and Indian, so I don't know how she translates to being an African-American. So it's going to be interesting, when Tim Scott joins as the running mates to Trump, and they go on a debate, and we say, who is an African-American in this situation?
But is it about being African-American now? I mean, it could be anyone, from any part of the world. You talk about the UK, for instance, talk about Rishi Sunak. He's an African, but, he's Asian and, has a Hindu background and all of that. But let's, look at it from another angle. Now, President Joe Biden has spoken out strongly, about what's happening in Israel. Do you see that perhaps affect his chances in the forthcoming election?
Well, Biden, I don't think he's going to be the next president. The guy physically doesn't look like it. He can handle the pressure of the office. And then, mentally, it's not about being 81 years old. There are many 81-year-old people that are very strong and mentally alert. You could see that Biden doesn't have it. When he speaks, when he talks, look at his facial expression. You could see he's agonizing his thoughts. And when that is happening, that means there's something going on with his brain. So he has to be constantly reminded of what to say, where he is. And then sometimes he uses words and phrases that are very confusing. And then his staff members have to come back to correct the damage he's done. So whether the Israeli thing stops before the election, the fact that the Americans are tired of him, the domestic issues that he has been able to oversee while he's president is affecting America negatively. So we want a replacement. Now, the replacement choice is him or Trump, but I think Trump is going to pull it off.
Well, you have explained your Republican bias, because Democrats definitely would not told this path, that you have just told. They would tell you Joe Biden is the man for the job. But then